via live stream. Meeting opening and roll call. Sorry, I'm so sorry, Carlin. We're going to ask the roll call and verification form.
Mr. Robbie.
Here.
Ms. Portson.
Here.
Mr. Pope.
Here.
Mr. Summers.
Here.
Ms. Rano.
Here.
Mr. Kowalski.
Here.
Mr. Campos.
Here.
Ms. Bushman.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Item 3, Pledge of Allegiance. Let's stand for the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, item 4, public comments. Members of the public may provide comment pertaining only to specific items on the agenda in person or via email. Carlin, did we get any emailed comments?
We did not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do appreciate that.
So comments made by the public shall be civil in content and tone, affirming the decorum established for a school board meeting by the school board. Yes. Yes. Disparaging comments, remarks about school board members, employees, students, position titles, and/or district citizens shall not be made. Okay, so we have 2 individuals that signed up for public comment. The first is Michael Summers regarding agenda item 13A.
What is it, Glenn?
6C and 13D.
Okay, thank you. And
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
I'm addressing citizen appointment for the board committees tonight. 13. I just want to thank the board for the opportunity to apply for the appointment to the school board committee. As the board moves to discuss and vote on the citizen appointments this evening, I respectfully ask that during the meeting, the selection rubric used by Chairpersons Pope and Rano to nominate the citizens for the committee appointments be publicly revealed and explained to the board and committee members in attendance. At the time of the application, the selection rubric metrics were not available for review. And for purposes of clarity and transparency, I ask that the selection rubric be shown at this time. To be clear, I'm not asking for how each metric was applied to each of the individual candidates, but rather details on a generic metrics used to judge all the candidates. So that's just a simple request to the board and to the committee chairpersons.
Okay,
That's it. Thank you.
Mike. Thanks, Mike.
All right, the next individual is Jim Lepek regarding agenda item 9B.
Thank you. I'd like to speak partly in opposition to item 9B, policy 5460 revision, at least as it is written. In principle, I'm greatly in favor of 7th and 8th grade students being allowed to get high school credit for courses they take that are at a high school level. I just don't like the way it was presented to the board in policy. I agree with state statute 118.33 as written, and the district should follow state law before entertaining recommendations or opinions from the DPI on this issue. I feel the administration presented several barriers to students acquiring high school credit unnecessarily as 7th and 8th grade academic careers go along. These barriers are not stipulated within the state law. I also object to the requirement to declare ahead of time for high school credit. Most students would like to receive high school credit for courses. If possible, a communication could be sent to parents explaining the process ahead of registration or explained within academic guide. This barrier is also not within state statute 118.33. I also object to the 4-credit limit that was proposed. This was a barrier to moving on to more challenging courses and possible early graduation. Why prevent a top student from excelling? If a student is capable, it should be encouraged. Also, this is not in state law as well. I object to the generality of allowing the district administrator power to decide which district courses fall under this Act 138. According to state statute 118.33, the credits can include any combination of vocational education, foreign languages, fine arts, other courses, etc. This option should not be confined, or at least it was implied at the last educational service meeting that only math and foreign languages were going to be allowed. I would also ask that the school board consider removing student barriers and allowing this policy of revision to be retroactive to all current students. Students and parents may simply apply for this reparation if they are current high school students. An example of this, my student completed 2 semesters of Intro to Agri-Science 1 and 2 with her freshman peers as an 8th grader. Her peers received high school credit. She took the exact same coursework. My student did not, even though she received high standing in the courses. And since the topic of graduation requirements is on the agenda, I'd like to also ask the board to discuss the current social studies requirements. Specifically, the requirement by the district to require courses in Intro to Diversity or social problems. These are not state requirements. These have only been declared by the district. I ask these courses no longer be required for graduation and simply be electives. These 2 courses are very controversial with unbalanced political content. There is no ability to proactively opt out of these according to School District Policy 2240. I would also ask the school board discuss the current health requirements under this policy revision. The current health course contains about 95% human growth development content. According to state statute 118.019, this content cannot be required if a parent objects. I ask the board expand the course availability to satisfy this 0.5 credit of health required for graduation by the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Glenn Rindell. Regarding agenda items 6C and 13B.
Technically, you didn't do anything. No, 6C and 13B, they kind of run together. They're both coming off the same issue as far as going through. Glenn Rindell, 1024 Brawley Street, parent-teacher, speaking as, in this case, the head of the Stevens Point Area Education Association. Referring to 6C, you'll see that we have a number of new hires coming in. And we also have, between this month and last month, a large number of resignations. Over the past couple of weeks, I've been able to sit down with a number of people or contact by phone over a dozen of the people who are leaving the district and discuss some issues with them. I think a lot of it is addressed in the staff survey. Those are the issues. But too often, and again, it's through no fault of the board or the administration, the voices of the teachers are heard when they're celebrated by students or they're celebrated by administration. But there are a number of teachers that I spoke to. You kind of break teachers down, people who left. They left for other opportunities. They left because teaching wasn't for them. I'm referring to the ones who either the rules changed or it became more difficult, or they just couldn't leave. The term, as far as if we'd be able to analyze, the term is unsustainability in their cases, where people fought hard in their classrooms and they still decided it was in their best interest to leave. I know we're coming up with a lot of the budget talk today and the necessity for a referendum in the future. But I really, especially at the level of elementary, hope we can do whatever possible to support those people who need support. Because in speaking with them, sometimes they felt, and I don't have an authority to say it's true, they felt that they were the last line. How much they could take was how much they were expected to take. And when they decided that they couldn't take anymore, they just said, okay, we're done. We're done. And again, this is not an indictment of building level or district administration, but we have some very difficult issues in the district. And I want you to understand that there are people who are not coming here. There are people who, like I said, filling out a survey, they'll say their concerns, but I'm here to speak to those people and the people that I personally talked to. There were people who didn't want to leave this district, but they felt they had to. Which brings us to 13B, the surveys. The staff survey, as far as the information, I appreciate the categorization and organizing according to topics, because one of the issues that I think is a big one to talk about is specifically talking about teacher compensation. I think most people don't necessarily realize pre-Act 10, originally the model of all teacher pay was set up probationary. You know, you've got 3 years to decide if a teacher is going to work out, and then after that the pay escalates. effectively after Act 10, anybody at any time can be removed from their job. That idea of starting over and then saying after these 3 years we've got a big investment in this teacher and moving on, that's not there anymore. Yet our salary schedule doesn't affect it. And I want you to understand, just from a teacher's perspective, there's no roadmap. When you look at that pay, and I say, ask any teacher, where are you going to be 5 years from now? They'll say, I don't know. I said, well, what about 3 years from now? I don't know. What about next year? I don't know. I mean, you talk about the 7% plus raise, and that's great, but again, it's still historic inflation. They lost money. If you look at Rhinelander, if you look at Marshfield, if you look at Wausau, every year they know for 10 years where they're going to go. Stevens Point used to have a 10-year salary schedule. I knew in 10 years, if I got a master's degree plus an additional 36 credits, and again, it's very different now, I knew exactly where I was going to be. We just don't have those place markers anymore, and a lot of teachers are finding that out. Teachers are finding out they don't necessarily know where they're supposed to be. And in this case, as we move forward, I hope we can take a look at the ideas of when teachers talk about it, they just want to know. I mean, you can look at our top pay and you can say, hey, it's great, but if it takes you 23 years to get there, it's not worth it. And if when you get there, you count up your sick days to see what your retirement benefit is, there's difficulties. I understand the financial difficulties, but this is just an opportunity to say from everything that was written in that survey, and I do hope you take a look at the other results. It's very important to take a look at bringing these people in.
Your 3 minutes are up, Glenn.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. We will now move into presentations, communication report with Sarah O'Donnell.
Hello, thank you. The communication dashboard is included in your packet for your review for activities during May. May is a very exciting and busy time for everyone in the district, and so communication gets to participate in that and really help tell the stories of really the culmination of just a really great year. So if we take a look, media coverage, we have had very good media coverage throughout the month, 27 pieces with a really nice reach. The hiring of Janelle McCarville got picked up nationally, so that really saw a lot of those, that AVE and reach jump is due to that hire. Very excited for that. Digital media, Facebook page reach was up. Engagement was also up quite a bit, over 120%, which is great to see. Again, not super surprising just given that content. It's a function of it being May. Instagram was up as well.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system.
Sorry, Meg is Sorry, calling we're in. trying to
That's
call
okay.
Sarah.
I can wait. Okay, I'll just keep going. Instagram was up as well, 87% on reach and just over 100% on engagement. So really nice shares there, storytelling there. For our own information, both internal and external did very well. Our highest engagement click-through was on the district source for that month, which just had a lot of information in it. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions, Sarah?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Right. Item B, Superintendent's Report with Court.
Sure. So first of all, I'd just like to take a few minutes to thank the staff for a great year. Our staff, as has been mentioned multiple times tonight, have done an incredible job with some tough issues. And I was out and about in the buildings the last few days of school, and there was so much excitement and just proud students, proud families, and proud staff. So thank the staff, thank the students for working really hard, and for families for sharing their students with us. We had a lot of exciting things. We had the Youth Apprenticeship Banquet. We had multiple graduations, concerts, athletic events. Our boys track team won state. We found out today that our baseball team won 6-5 in the quarterfinal, and they'll be in the championship on Wednesday. So we've got some things still happening as we end the year, but all in all, it's been a really good year and a great end to the year. Meg, you're on. I would also like to talk a little bit about summer school. Today was the first day of summer school, and all reports were that things went really, really well for the first day, which I'm hopeful, fingers crossed, that that's an indication of what the rest of the summer school session will be like. So great day. We've got over 2,500 kids in more than 4,500 classes, and we still have students signing up for some of those not normal courses like the OLC, Camp Invention, and some of those that go through a little bit different registration process than the normal summer school
Did you say 4,500 classes?
courses. Yep.
Courses.
So a student could take like
Oh,
4
multiple
classes.
courses. Okay, sure.
Yep. We are offering during the summer school sessions free meals, breakfast and lunch for any student. They don't have to be enrolled in summer school. They just have to be a resident of our district. And they can attend those breakfast or lunch sessions at Kennedy, Madison, McKinley, Roosevelt, or Spash. So I would encourage families, if they're interested, there's information on our website that lists those times that families can show up and be fed for free this summer.
Is that through a grant?
No, it is not through a grant. It was at one time. Next, I want to share, we had a community-wide truancy meeting as required by statute once every 4 years. If you are the school district in the county seat, you are required to pull a community group of people together. We had over 40 individuals from multiple agencies and all of the Portage County schools show up. It was a great meeting, and we're going to continue to meet. We formed a subcommittee from that group, and then we've decided 4 years is too long. So we're going to continue that conversation. We also had a community-wide rescue task force active shooter training last Thursday, where we had over 100 people that showed up for that. Again, EMT, fire, sheriff, police department, multiple school staff. It was an all-day activity, and it went really, really, really well. The cabinet will be debriefing. Again, we debriefed as an entire group last week. Cabinet will debrief on Wednesday, and then we'll continue communications and debriefing sessions with the police department. So that went very well. And lastly, I know WASB had sent out some information, as did some of my professional organizations, about the potential work that's happening on the state budget. There's going to be a session tomorrow afternoon. We've got 3 board members that are working with me that I've asked. Ted, Alex, and G are in a legislative work group, so I'm going to let G give a few highlights of what they're going to be talking about tomorrow, and then I can add some information as well.
Yeah, and thanks, Alex, for sending some of that information today. We're kind of hoping that we can rotate this around, but today, I mean, it's important stuff going on tomorrow, as you all know. They're voting tomorrow on the K-12 curriculum. These are funding. So these are the major things, and if you guys want to add anything else, feel free, that would affect our schools. The baseline for schools is being raised from $10,000 to $11,000 for per pupil funding. Okay, so that's good news for schools who are at $10,000. Okay, we're not, right? We're above that. Per pupil aid is scheduled to go up $325 this coming year, and the year after in the biennium. For a total of $650. Can I ask, what are we at right now for per pupil
Tom?
referendum?
$10,777.
Oh, so we are affected by,
Could you be more exact?
so we will be affected by the first thing I said, we'll be moving up to 11 as a matter of fact before we get to the 325.
If that comes to pass, yes.
Yeah, if it passes. Okay, so we are affected by that. The Office of School Safety will receive $0, so they're going to be discontinued at the end of 2023. Then there's I don't know how to say this. They want to advance a reading program, and they're attaching $50 million to it. And that's a reading program that comes from Mississippi, phonics program that, they want to help kids with reading problems in the state. And in fact, the information that came with it, I was astonished to learn in the state of Wisconsin, we're last in black kids' achievement at 3rd grade reading level. We're dead last, which floored me. For white kids, we're actually rated at 28th or 27th, somewhere around there, about the same as Mississippi. So those were the major things that I picked out. I don't know if Alex and Ted, you had anything else you wanted to add, or anybody else?
There is increased special ed funding and then dollars for school-based mental health support. So those were two other areas that there were dollars.
They said they would go up to 33 1/3%.
Yep.
From 30.
Dennis?
I just had a quick question. I know politically, isn't there the other side of it that they're increasing voucher dollars significantly?
Yes.
From 8,400 to 9,500 for K-8, and then to 11,000, 12,000, I don't remember. Remember what it?
For 912.
I think it's
K-8
12,
is-
and then 912 is 12,000, I
Yes.
think.
Yeah.
Correct?
Given there's carrots on both sides,
12,000 something.
It's likely to pass.
do you have any feeling at all as to whether, I mean, is there any indication from the legislators of their support or non-support for this, or is it pretty well unknown at this point?
From what I've read, it seems that there is support on both sides because both of them are losing something that they don't want to lose. And so it's a compromise budget because they want the governor to sign it. So the governor asked some things, especially in the education side of things. And then the Republicans gave
Sure.
some, especially the increased funding, the 11,000 and the 325. That was raised, but then they're like, well, we want voucher raised so that it's on the radio this morning, so that it's on par with what public schools are funded at.
Tom, what are you hearing from your colleagues, or is it, do they have a feeling one way or the other, or is it kind of a crapshoot? Whether this will get support, bilateral support?
I think they're following along with the same, everything that's been presented tonight. I mean, that's the word, but we'll see what happens when everybody gets together. And, you know, if the governor and the speaker and Ross all have something worked out, I don't know who else is gonna change it.
Okay.
Well, the things I've
Fingers
read in conjunction with this is it's been framed as a governor and legislature package. That
Compromise.
they've already talked. So I don't see any reason why it wouldn't
That's
pass.
why it wouldn't pass.
Knock on wood.
So more to come after
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you for the update.
Yep, that's it.
We did go, there were several
I forgot to mention, thank you for that. Several staff members took a trip via a Black Hawk helicopter to the Challenge Academy. Jen Bushman was there, Jeff Milsna was there, Amy Roberts from SPASH, Lynette Patoka, and any other district staff?
That was it.
That was
And
it,
it
I
was
think.
just the 4.
I thought that we had a couple more, but I can't recall off the top of my head, yeah.
Pardon me? Who was it? Oh, Lauren Hendrickson. She's a.
Kelly Young.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So anyway, Jen, how was the trip?
I think it was just, I mean, I was nervous to attend, but I had to sign my life away, I felt like, but it was such a meaningful experience. We had time to learn more about the Challenge Academy and what it does for all students in the state of Wisconsin. And I had an opportunity to meet one-on-one with a lot of the cadets and just hearing their journey and how they got there and where they feel like they're going to go upon completion of the program. We're really fortunate to have such a program and afford that to our students that need it in the state.
Great, thanks for,
Yeah.
Jen.
Awesome. Okay, so moving on to consent agenda. This is going to be the minutes from the prior school board meeting, May 8th, 2023, approval of the schedule of monthly bills and employment recommendations. I am looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Second?
Second.
Right, all in favor? Any
Aye.
discussions or questions, I should say? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I was going to, actually, Carlin, can you do the roll call to monthly bills, please?
Sure. Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Mr. Campos,
Yes.
Ms. Rano,
Yes.
Mr. Kowalski,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Mr. Robbie,
Yes.
Ms. Erler,
Yes.
Mr. Summers,
Yes.
Ms. Bushman,
Yes.
and motion carries.
Thank you. Item 7, business services. We have the business services and HR committee report from Judy.
Right. So we had a good meeting last week. Two of the big things are actually on the agenda. So we have the approval of the preliminary 2023-24 budget. Tom? turning it over to you.
So I guess you enjoyed your trip on the helicopter, huh? So I guess you enjoyed your trip on the
Just in your new features.
been on many of those. Okay, the preliminary budget. If we go to the next page, you can read this. I'm just going to say a few comments that basically encapsulate this. The purpose of the preliminary budget is basically just to do one thing, to get us legally from July 1st to the point in time in the end of October when we adopt the actual budget. This under statute is a requirement under 12013, and this allows us to continue to pay bills, etc., and proceed with all of our financial requirements as we get to the point of actually adopting the real budget. As a preliminary budget, I will tell you that many numbers in here are quite wrong. We just don't know what they're going to be. We do not have the third Friday count in September because it hasn't happened yet. We don't know our equalized value because we don't get that till October 1st. We don't know what our state aid is because we don't get that till October 15th. And a lot of things change between the time that just the budget is adopted. They have to convert that into apportionment among all the buildings, among all the districts, and they have to give the statutes time to be written and drafted and clarified, etc. So it is a lengthy process, and we really won't have a lot of final numbers until we get into October. We'll have a better feeling, obviously, later in probably August than we certainly do now. We're getting some things in, but it's still tentative. On the next slide, it's a little hard to see, but I like to start it out this way so that everybody can get a chance to look this over. We have a column called Expenditures. It lists under fund all the various funds that make up the district, the general fund, the special project funds, the debt service, food service trust, etc. And all of those total up to $127.6 million. And as the memo indicated, we have revenue of 123 million, etc. We are projecting on this slide a shortfall in the general fund of about 8.51%, not percent, dollars. I think that's high, and I think when we get done with the legislative actions that take place, I think it'll be lower than that. But for the purpose of the preliminary, this is the number that came out. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Also, I wanted to point out, excuse me, I jumped, I am sorry. I also wanted to point out that the levy rate we're showing is unchanged at $6.74, and that's a low levy rate, and we've had among the lowest levy rates of all of our similar sized districts around us for many years. So it's very, very competitive. In this example, I estimated a 4% increase in equalized. That is helping to accomplish that 674, but we have averaged more than that in the last 10 or 15 years. So I think it's in the ballpark, but again, that's one of the unknowns. It could be wrong. It could be more, could be less. Okay, now the next slide. This is a slide. You have this in background, and it's in the packet, and anybody in the community can see this too. This data shows all of the different dollar amounts. It shows the audited amounts from 21, 22. It shows the budget from this year, and it shows the preliminary budget for next year. And it does include salaries of 7%, a health insurance increase of 8.5%, a general aid at 4%. I did build this in with a $250 per pupil increase and a $100 per pupil categorical. Among the information that came out, G was mentioning they were talking about this $100 categorical, taking it up to the $850 $47 that represented, so I think I lucked out on that projection, $842. I might have nailed that one. I got one out of all of them, maybe. So that's moving along. And the food service, we have a reduction in that fund balance. That's a planned reduction, working with DPI. We can't have too much of a fund balance in that fund because of federal monies, so they regulate that, and we have to spend that down. But that's good because that allowed us an opportunity to extend a universal free breakfast again next year. So that's been a big positive out of that. So we're happy about that. On the next slide, this is a different way of looking at the data that makes that up. This is the revenue, preliminary revenue. Each column is a different fund. You start with a 10, 20, 30, 40, you go across, and those numbers will all total up to 123.1 million in the bottom right-hand corner there. Again, obviously, those numbers are going to change because we do not know under 621, for example, general aid, we don't know what that's going to be until October 15th for sure. And even after that, technically, it can change a little bit, but I won't get into that inside baseball stuff. The next slide is looking at expenditures, and I'm starting out with salaries and then benefits. These are called objects. I kind of like to take just a second, and maybe, I think in August, I might go into this a little bit more with the committee in talking about the structure. But you take a pen like this object, that's a 411. If I use that in the general fund, which I do, it's the 10 fund. And then this would be my location in my office with just 3-digit code. And then it would be a 411, because this is a general supply item. And if it's in the principal's office, it would be 241,000. If it's an elementary teacher, it'd be 110,000, et cetera. If it were agriculture, it'd be 121,000. If it were math, it'd be 124,000. So that's what the object tells us. Now, if you go to the next slide, I mentioned those 110,000, the 241, the 251, which is me, et cetera, and things like that. That's the functional area in which the pen would be used. So if I'm using it in physical curriculum, that'd be 140, like FIED, maybe 143,000, something like that. So that's how that's all broken out. One of the interesting things I like to point out, under regular curriculum, 120,000, the next digits, the subunits of those 121, 122, 123, as you go through, are alphabetical. So 121 is agriculture, 122, then you just move up from there. You go to English, 123 be foreign language, 100, and you just go right through math, science, social studies, 127. It's kind of a handy way to remember some of those numbers. Anyway, I'll get off of that train. The next slide is the revenue limit worksheet. And I think this is one of the things I want to spend some time with the Finance Committee with in August and just kind of review this. Give you some familiarity. It's actually a 4-page sheet, but the first 2 pages are the meat of it and most of the stuff that goes on. This is the first page. It's kind of a calculation area page. The upper third there with the yellow lines and ending in the green one is a carryover from last year so that we can start everything off on the right-hand side when you get to see that point. So that number there, like 72 million and some change, I can't read it from here, will appear on line 1 of the second page. You'll see that in a minute. The middle area there, you see those 2 tables in yellow, and you've probably heard the term the 3-year rolling average. Well, that's what those 2 tables represent. One 3-year average, and then the one below it rolls because the oldest year goes out. The other 2 come down diagonally, and then you fill in your new year, which is in the reddish color. So that old year drops out, and that's where you get the rolling aspect. The upper green line there has the average of that first 3-year period. The green line below that has the average of the new 3-year period. And then you average those out to get your count. Then near the bottom, you see quite a large number, some billions of dollars. That's the equalized value of the district. We're in billions. So that's the left hand, it's a computational worksheet area, but some of those numbers carry over then to the second page, which is the next slide. And we start at the top and basically just work your way right down. I won't go through it all and take up too much time, but you can see that first yellow line, you see that $10,000? That's the line they're talking about changing to $11,000. Okay? And right below that in kind of in a reddish is I have 250, they'd be talking about 325. But the one that would dominate us, if they change it, would be probably, unless they do something with the language. I don't know what they're gonna do, but if they change that to 11,000, then we would be at 11,000 per pupil, et cetera. And of course, that would affect what I'm projecting the preliminary in terms of a shortfall. It would reduce that. Yes, sir?
Do you mind if I ask a question right now? I don't want to stop you when you're rolling,
Oh, go ahead.
but it pertains to what you just said. I just did some quick calculations. You said we were at 10.7 per student,
Yeah,
10,000.
If you look at
70 or something?
the third line down,
Yeah, okay.
10,277 and some change.
Oh, 10,200.
Yeah,
Okay, so,
we're very low spending district,
yeah,
so it's
so I
low.
just did some real quick things. I figured 10.3. We're gonna go up 700 per student to get to 11.
Right.
Are we gonna get the 325 on top of that if they
No.
vote for it?
Well, no, probably not. No, that depends again on the language. But
So
I
it would be at the bottom.
I would be shocked. No, I don't expect that at all. That's not how the worksheet has ever worked.
Okay, so we'll be the lowest spending district in the state if
Would what?
if this gets passed.
Would we be,
If they're raising anybody that's below 11,000 to 11,000 per student, we're there. We're one of those districts. So
yeah,
all those districts
11,000
will
or
be the
below
lowest.
is
Yeah.
not considered a high spending district, correct?
Yeah, but we'll be the lowest because
Would we
we'll
be
be at 11.
lowest in the state? No.
Well, if they're raising all the people below 11,000 to 11,000,
Well,
then
some districts.
we're one of those, right?
The 11,000 is a ceiling, a low revenue ceiling. If you have a district, let's say that, I'll just fabricate a number. Let's say they're spending $9,500 a student, and they have no financial difficulty, and they can continue spending $9,500, or maybe $97 next year. They could continue to spend $9,700.
There's not many districts like that, though.
Sure, there are some.
There are some
Not
that
many.
are lower and prefer to remain lower.
There are districts that are below the ceiling.
Okay. Okay, well, I just did some quick calculations. We have about 7,000 students.
Right,
So this would raise us up $700 per student.
about 4.9 million.
Yeah, so you haven't figured any of that in your
Well,
preliminary
no,
budget?
because
Yeah.
they haven't even talked about these numbers until yesterday or
Yeah.
the weekend, so
Yeah.
no, these were done.
I just want to know what to expect if the
Yeah.
budget passes.
Yeah,
we'll
what I
be
caution
looking at
everybody is,
Don't count your
it's not over until it's over. These may happen. You could even say they'll probably happen, but they aren't until that's signed. It ain't
Well, I
there.
understand that you can't put those in your preliminary budget, but I just want to know if it passes or if it doesn't, how that affects your
I would estimate
forecast for next
I
year.
would estimate that the $8.3 million shortfall would, I'm sticking my neck out here, because I hate it when you say numbers, because everybody said, you said it was gonna, it could be around 5 million shortfall.
Won't hold you to it.
Oh, yes, they will. I guarantee it. So, yeah, that could drop us down to around the 5 million range. But I don't know what other things they are working at and how they stay at their increased handicapped aid 3.3, so that theoretically could reduce our transfer from our 10 fund, which is over 11 million, which is the local cost of special ed, so that could have an effect.
Because the special ed funding they upped it to 14,000 something, correct?
Well, it's normally funded right now at 30%.
Okay.
And they're talking about 33 and a third, so it's only a 3.3% increase. It's
Okay.
not a huge increase, but it's something, so. Anyway, good question, yeah. It definitely is gonna have an impact. Until we see the final numbers, we won't know how much, but I expect that this shortfall is gonna be whittled down some. Yeah. Okay, and then it just ended here, just kind of where I started out, kind of to show you then this is what we're doing. We basically, this just shows a $1.5 million levy increase with a no change in the levy rate. We're gonna try to shoot to keep that in control. We've always had very low levy rates, and we've been very competitive. Even when we've done increases of sizable amounts, we've managed to do things to keep that a good investment for the taxpayers. And so, subject to your questions, I'm done with this spiel.
Any questions for Tom?
So basically, in essence, we're looking at a budget just so we can pay bills. Numbers are wrong, best guess at this point until we hear what's happening. Sum it up?
Sum it up.
I'm going to make a motion to approve the adoption of the preliminary 2023-24 budget as presented.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
All right, and then the other thing on, that we talked about at the meeting was the 10-year capital improvement plan. So this was kind
Yeah.
of exciting to listen. And again, it's a big, long-range plans that may or may not happen, but strategically to have this in place, I think is really good.
Forgive me the use of the word exciting. The exciting thing about this 10-year plan is we have finally been able to refine this with all of its subcomponent parts. There are 11 sub-10-year plans that together total this summary page that you're looking at. We've got items like asphalt, bathroom remodeling, cabinets, exterior doors, flooring, grounds, HVAC, a category called others, which is kind of like a miscellaneous, remodeling, roofing, and windows. This is what, when we look at the district and we see these, like all of our chillers and the roof patching and all of that, we have experts, we come and take a look at that, and we say, all right, if we were to lay this out of 10 years and do everything we needed kind of on a 10-year basis, where would that take us? This is the detail. It's in your background, but of course it's just laid out straight down. In the summary, I have the ability to tap on a thing called plan, and I can isolate the display to show the plan. So if I want to just look at windows, I can do that. If I just want to look at HVAC, I can do that and see the 10-year plan for each item, like an HVAC or asphalt. I can also click on the year and I can see everything that's going to happen in a year, or I can just see the asphalt for a year or the HVAC for a year. So we've got some flexibility to look at that. The only limiting feature is, and it's a significant one, is we're looking at between $2 and $2.5 million per year for this plan. And of course, as you get out further, it gets to be more expensive because things are kind of just put out there to hold. So we can't sustain that. We don't have the funds to sustain that at that dollar amount at this time. So what we will do is we will look at the things that we've identified for this year. Some of the things you've already identified that we're going to have to do, well, not that we have to, we want to do, we need to do, like the PA system at pods, etc. So we'll take care of those things, and there are some other things that we're going to look at in the next year because there's some roofing things that we need to evaluate, etc. And we kind of categorize them by, the experts do, by a red situation. You know, we got to do this thing. And maybe if a section was in the 10-year plan for this year, but maybe we can get by another year, we'll hold off and try to get it off. But as we've all witnessed, we've gone through 5 years of deferred maintenance and spent about $80 million. So if we don't take care of this on a regular basis, it's going to add up and we're going to be facing a much larger bill. So we want to try to chew up as much of this as we can. So I just wanted to bring that to your forefront. Yes, sir?
Is the amount for 2024 included in your preliminary budget? Did you include that?
The amount that's in there for the first year is,
Part of
there's
your
about $200,000 that's in the preliminary budget. The rest of it is 46 fund.
Okay.
The 10 fund is kind of joined with the 46 fund and in some part with the 10 fund.
So would it be correct to say we have the money for that?
We
For
do
next
at
year?
the moment. We've got about $6 million in the 46 fund. And if you figure if we went full bore and spent what's identified each year, we'd only get 2 to 3 years and that fund would be depleted. That's why I say we can't sustain it. We have to have a way to add money back into that fund to do that. So that would require money being transferred from the general fund to the 46 fund. And if you, when you make that transfer, that is aided by the state at the time you make that transfer. We're about 50% aided roughly, so, we get about half the money back. But, so that's a good deal for us, but we have to have the money to move that over. Right now, we don't. So if we were to build that into our budget, in the second year, not this coming year, but the year after, if we were to build that in and have it associated with, say, a referendum or something, where that would be, X amount would be absolutely dedicated to go into that fund, then we could.
And that could
Sustain
be
it.
part of a referendum.
That could be part of it, yeah. It's an operational question. Yeah, it's part of it could be. Again, that's just, could be. We haven't talked, you guys haven't talked about it and nothing's been specifically proposed. Those are just things that are possible that are out there.
And with that 46 fund being reimbursed at 50%-ish, is that based on free and reduced numbers, or how is that reimbursement?
How is that? It's just done based on whatever our relationship is to our state aid. It has nothing to do with free, reduced, or anything like that. It's just if you look in our book, I think we have a little bit. No, I'm thinking of the budget book. Mike, do you remember what the percent is off the top of your head? I don't. No. But let's just say for discussion purposes, if half of our income under the revenue limit comes from state aid and half comes from property tax, that's a 50-50.
Got it.
That's what I'm trying to say. So I'd have to kind of look at that percentages. So when the transfer occurs from the 10 fund to the 46, that's when the state aid is determined and it's paid in the year in which that transfer occurs. The next year. All aid is paid the following year, but that's when it's calculated, and then it's paid out the next year. When it's actually spent from the 46, there's no reimbursement because it's already been paid. I need to stop talking. Unless you have a question.
Any other questions for Tom?
Well, thanks for all your
Thanks,
work, Bill.
Tom.
Yep, thank you,
Thanks,
Tom.
Tom. Thank you. And your department.
You're welcome.
For a motion to approve? Yeah.
I'll move to approve the revised 10-year capital improvement plan as presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Tom. And we will move now to educational services. Item 9, we have a committee report from our chair, G.
We had one thing that moved from the committee report on to the board, and that's a policy 5460 revision, junior high students receiving high school credit. If you look down at near the bottom of the page, it gives a summary. The proposed updates to policy 5460 include the following key highlights. Language that ensures that we are following DPI guidance regarding teacher certification, rigor of course, and student identification. A process that students, families will use to identify if they plan to complete a course in junior high to count for high school credit. Number 3, identify the maximum number of high school credits a junior high student can potentially earn. And number 4, a process that will be used to determine courses that will be eligible for high school credit at the junior high level. Jeff is here. If any of you have any questions about this is an action item, and we'll be voting on this at the end of the discussion.
questions for Jeff? Or Jeff, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, we walked through it the last time at Ed Services, so the motion is to approve it as we presented during Ed Services, so if there were any questions for the group, just to be able to ask as a follow-up.
We are looking,
Well, it's, one thing I'd say is we're not the only people doing this. I mean, this is happening all over and I think part of it, the genesis of it was the the illustrative math courses made it so kids could bop forward, and that's where part of this came from. The maximum number of credits is 4, right?
Correct.
Currently, it's in 2 areas.
Until we look at and review with all
Yeah.
our secondary principals and staff.
Yeah.
This
So that's
time
not,
math and world language.
yeah, but the program has room to grow, and there is a process to make
And
it
will
grow.
it ever be more than 4?
It could be,
Potentially.
could be.
Again, and I think maybe I would just add to what G has already shared regarding this policy revision. It really did come by way of requests from students and parents. And this language does exist in policy 5460 that is presented by Neola. The Stevens Point School District has elected to not include this particular section of the policy. So ultimately, we are just adding this policy language to our policy, but it does, as G pointed out, exist in many districts' policy language that have a similar policy.
And a parent still, a high school parent, could not petition for retro credits.
Correct.
Yeah, and if I follow up on that, is that right? There's we discussed a lot of things to make sure the rigor of the course is the same. The teachers have the certification, and that'll be watched. So I think they covered all their bases in our committee meeting.
for community members who weren't at the Ed Services meeting, can we share why we are not going to allow retroactive credit to students that request it?
We had a lot of conversation around when you would select a date for it feels a bit arbitrary to say that we would make it retroactive to this date. There would always be questions about whether or not we'd have the ability to be able to extend it beyond. So we really felt like it was most transparent to make a policy change that would go into effect in the future versus make a policy change that would go backward. We also have to acknowledge that we have students that may have, as junior high students, elected not to take a math class or a world language class, and then would say, well, had I known, and we don't have any way to be able to accommodate those students who had made a different choice. So we really did feel like changes to policy language are best implemented moving forward versus going back and making them retroactive. But
Thank you, Chris.
you're welcome.
I just want to thank the committee and the administration for all the work on this and bringing it forth. And I appreciate the fact that you listened to our scholars, listened to our parents, and did the best you can in terms of addressing it. And I give you guys a kudo for the good work.
Thank you.
Committee also.
Okay, we are looking for a motion for approval of the revised policy 5460 as presented.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, G.
Yep.
Moving on to item 10, Student Services Transition Coordinator Position.
I'm going to ask Jenny McMahon, our interim director of student services, to come forward and explain a little bit about this request. Jenny?
Hey everyone, nice
Hello.
to meet you. It's my first time getting to be with all of you, so thank you for having me.
Can I say, Jen, former SPASH student, graduate, and former chemistry SPASH student.
Got it. Yeah, good to
Yay.
be here. Well, I know SPASH has been working really hard to have a comprehensive transition program. It's kind of morphed over time, so this isn't something that's just popped up since I've come into the office. It's been something that everyone's been working on, trying to make sure that we're meeting student needs with transitions. So specific to students with disabilities, we have to start planning for their transition, meaning their life after high school, beginning at 14. which some people might not know. So already over at PJ's and Ben and Pods, we're already starting to talk about, what do you like to do? What might you want to do? What interests you? What do you think? And that starts with conversations with families, with students, and of course becomes much more specific as students age. And with some of our students, those transition plans are really clear. They have a lot of direction. Some of our students with more profound disabilities, that's much more complicated and really includes a lot of discussions with families, family members, community agencies, different nonprofits, jobs, all kinds of services. So students with disabilities, mild, moderate to severe, all have transition services through their IEP, but they're really custom. As you can imagine, coordinating that is a whole job. So teacher to teacher, of course, they're thinking about that. They're case managing their students. But in a large district, there's a lot to know. And it can be difficult, especially for new teachers, to know how can I help my students as early as possible start thinking about a successful transition. So over the years, our district had started with one of our teachers at SPASH having like a stipend position, so kind of extra duties that she would do to support transition. So she might attend conferences or kind of be the point person, just have a little bit of extra knowledge, but there was so much workload that they decided to add part of her job to someone else and make half of her job the transition coordinator. That was okay, but there was still a lot of workload. So there was a lot of donated time, extra time for someone who was just really passionate and wanted to continue to have good services. When that person left, it became crystal clear how much extra work she had been doing. So since her leaving, it has been, kind of divvied amongst everybody, but really at a bare bones level. Making sure that everybody has those services is a full-time position really in the size of our district. And so SPASH really has been talking in my ear, remember this, remember what our building has been talking about all year, so I wanted to make sure I brought it forward to the board. So they really see the need to add a full-time transition coordinator. That person would be housed out of SPASH, but like I had said, would help transition services and processes as young as our kids at 14, so over at the junior high school. And we offer a wide variety of services. Some of that would be coordinating like pre-vocational curriculum that we would use within special education. Some of it would be coordinating different programs that we have within special education, but making sure they're running well, they're not just kind of floating, or that they're being piecemealed amongst different individuals. So we have programs such as JET that helps with job exploration. We work with DVR, which is the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, so making sure that we're referring students for those kinds of services. Some of it's even helping parents navigate different services or legal procedures. For example, some of our students with more profound disabilities, their parents actually might pursue guardianship. There's a lot of steps in that. And so having a go-to person for that whole spectrum of services is huge. And again, coordinating some of our specific programs, such at the Life Skills Center, if you've ever been there, we have a PAYS lab that really helps breaking down vocational skills to the most basic steps that someone could walk through and come out much more employable when they're seeking a job out in our community as a student with a disability. So what I've attached for you in your board packet has a lot more details, but if there's questions or information I can answer, I'd be happy to do that.
I do want to add to what Jenny said. So not only have there been multiple people at SPASH coordinating these services, we also budgeted $39,000 to contract with someone outside of the district last year. So how we intend to pay for this is through those allocated dollars as well as a grant. So Jenny, do you want to just talk a little bit about
Absolutely.
how those grant dollars come in and what we have to do to get those dollars?
Yeah, we fund that grant. So it's an incentive grant. So 1 year after students graduate from our district, we give them a call, and it's all through a standardized procedure through the DPI, and we do an interview with them. So we ask them about what have you been up to? Have you gone back to school? What did you do? What kind of certifications, or were you working? What did you do? And it gives us information on the outcomes of those students and helps us measure all the work that we put into their transition. It helps us understand their outcomes and if our program is effective. For every successful survey, meaning that we actually contacted the student or in some cases their parent, if they had those details, we're able to get a certain amount of compensation per survey. So in the board documents, I gave you what we've gotten historically over the last, I think, 5 years, and then I took an average as well. So we've been very successful in reaching out to our graduates clearly and getting that consistent stream of income to come from that incentive grant.
Thank you, Jenny.
Just a couple of questions. How many students typically, on average, transition each year?
I don't have that number.
Would you guess? I mean, the full-time position, so is it like, I mean, how many do we have last year?
Oh, well, starting at 14, we would be programming for every student starting at 14. So
this
versus who
individual
graduates.
works with 14 to 18.
This person along with many other
Right.
staff.
Yep. Okay.
Right. And then, of course, we have some special programs with in our district, like Project Search or our Life Skills Center. So sometimes students remain on for additional education. So in some circumstances, students stay on until 21 in special education. Not a lot.
First of all, I'm very, very supportive of the position. I'm just trying to get an idea of, you know, we're hiring a full-time position
Yeah.
here. So from a, you know, from a fiscal point of view, I'm wondering, are we, the actual transitions each year, I'm just trying to get some idea how many kids are transitioning to justify a full-time position. For example, in a small district, we have 1 child, 2 children transitioning, you wouldn't have a transition coordinator.
Right.
But what, in our district, how many, I mean, we must have some idea how many are transitioning each year.
So this is all special ed students,
Correct.
starting at the age of 14. And then once they leave SPASH, they may choose to stay on until they're 21, or they may decide not to do that and go
Right.
and be employed. So on average, it just really varies on the students and their needs each year. But we can get you like.
No, that's,
the
I just wanted to make sure that we recognize that it is.
Hundreds of conversations annually.
Yep.
Yeah, and then
It might-
over that course of their entire, you know, basically about 8th grade
Sure.
or so, all the way through until they
They might
graduate.
start transition activities early on in the process. It's not what like, okay, you're graduating this year, and now we have, you know, we have 200 graduates, and now we're transitioning those.
Right,
Okay,
yeah.
good clarification. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and they have, within their IEPs, they have an extra document called a PTP, a transition plan. So it has goals in it, services, and every year we add to it, what are we gonna do for you this next year to keep reaching your goals, whatever they might be.
And what is the salary range of this position that you're recommending?
I would recommend, I believe it's in the board packet,
39.
No, it's,
Oh, I don't think.
a master's,
don't
but
see it.
actually, I would think someone with a bachelor's would be absolutely sufficient
It
for
would
that.
be a teacher's contract.
A
so
teacher's
it would be
contract.
typical of a
Yes.
teacher contract is what,
193
if they have a
day
master's, then that would be taken consideration just like it is for teachers. But
Absolutely.
Correct.
it's not an enhanced salary being a coordinator.
No, nope.
Okay, thank you. And I'd just like to say this is, I understand the importance of this position, and I'm very, very supportive of it. And those families who are experiencing those transitions, I know how important that is to them. So thank you for bringing it forward to the board.
Of course.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah.
Can I just follow up one more time? So
Yes.
looking at the information you provided, so you said average is 28,000 for the past 5 years. We have earned the following funds through the incentive grant. You said that it's self-funded, so we're paying that. Is that correct?
So
it's a
every summer,
self-funded
we,
grant.
we make those phone calls, yeah. And part of this position has always been that this transition coordinator, even when it was just a stipend, that person was making those phone calls.
So we're paying ourselves $28,000?
No, we
How
get
does this
that
grant-
from the
Oh,
DPI.
from the DPI.
Okay.
It's a reimbursement.
That's a reimbursement. Ah, okay. So part of this reimbursement, so let's say the average 28,000, which was provided by you. So that 28,000 would be reduced from the salary. So if the salary is 42, 44 for a beginning,
Correct.
whatever
Yeah.
that is. So that 28 minus 44, but then benefits on top of it. We would still
Correct.
have to
Correct.
be.
And it would be the funds that we have allocated in the past for this. So we've accounted for this in the past. So it would
This
come out of the
is-
special ed funding.
This is no new funding coming out.
Correct.
Readjustment of funding though,
Yep.
and it's, and now it becomes a pump funding will fully utilize, because in the past we funded for 39,000, but we're only using $6,000 of that. So now we know that whatever the position is, and I don't have the exact data at the point they're gonna come through, but that is now gonna be added on to the roll, and we're gonna pay that each and every year.
Yes.
Yes.
that extra funding, if we get, we'll just say the average, so we got 30,000 budget, we've got, we'll just use simple numbers, 28,000 on average, simple number. If the position is 39,000, just for simple numbers, so that it would exhaust what we've budgeted, that 28,000, some money will come out of there for benefits. Whatever's left over, does that go back, or does that?
Goes into the special ed funding.
That's, okay,
Yep.
that's how that goes, okay.
I would think all that's gonna be utilized, because I'm not sure, but I think our teachers are coming in somewhere between 45,000, and with a master's probably a little more, so that's gonna take all that.
Sure. I mean, for simple numbers, anybody that's not a mathematician, so they can grasp that.
Yeah.
Right, and the salary and fringe are obviously a significant component of any salary package that we put
I have
together.
no doubt
so-
it'll all be gone, but.
Yeah, right. But I love the
I like your
optimism.
optimism,
Yeah,
yeah.
I love the
Are there
optimism.
any other grants that we can apply for to offset some of this additional funds?
Not that I can think of off the top, but that's something that we can definitely look into. I mean, we exhaust almost every grant opportunity that we can.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
You're
this is
welcome.
gonna be a new person that we're gonna go out and search for, right?
We will post the position,
Yeah,
and we
just
may
like-
have some people internally that
Correct.
apply and some people externally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Jenny? Okay, thanks,
All right,
Jenny.
thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jenny.
Okay, so we are looking for a motion to approve the hire of 1.0 transition coordinator.
So motioned.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll move into item number 12, policy and legislation, new records retention schedules.
I'm going to ask Brian Casey to come forward to talk just briefly about the new records retention schedule and what we're asking the board for.
Yeah, good evening. So in 2010, the DPI created a set of records retention schedules, the 2010 GDRS, which applied to school districts. And over the last couple of years, the Public Records Board decided that that overlapped so many other records schedules that they were getting rid of it. So there are specific records for school districts, and that's a record schedule that's noted if you look at some of the materials in the packet of school district records. But they decided things like HR and fiscal and budgetary records, we could just use the regular general records schedules for the rest of the state, what everyone else uses. So that made it a little complicated for us because we've been operating with this records retention schedule for over a decade. And DPI came up with a way of different methods for us to move into this new realm of records retention. And that was called the crosswalk. So every time that there was an old GDRS 2010 record, they would recommend a new where that was located in the general record schedule for the state. So what we went through the proposal, we looked at what would be the best option for the state, and that would be to opt in to those records retention schedules specifically to the ones that apply to us. Not all of the records schedules, because that would be way too many records that don't even apply to us. So this is very specific, matches very closely what we were doing over a decade ago, and that requires board action to approve this, and then we would take the forms as presented here. They would be signed and sent into the Public Records Board to tell them this is the action that the board took, and then we would update the policy, which is outdated now because it refers to the record schedule that no longer exists.
Fun stuff.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments for Brian?
Lots of I
Is there a
dotting and T
cost
crossing.
associated with opting into the to the state?
No, just time of any staff involved, myself and a few others. Some districts you could opt, and I don't recommend this, but you could decide to make your own records retention schedules, and then you'd have to hire lawyers, and that's probably not a good thing we'd ever want to do.
Any other questions? Okay, we are looking for a motion to adopt parts of the record retention schedules presented in the DPI crosswalk and forms, complete the notification process with the Public Records Board, and update policy 8310, public records, to note the change.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
We will move to agenda item 13, general citizen appointment for standing board committees.
Sure. So I'll say just a few things, and then I'm going to turn it over to our committee chairs. So According to policy 155.1, we opened up applications for citizen members to join our committees. We took those applications until the end of April. We had 13 individuals apply, one of which did not indicate a preference in either one of our standing committees. We had 5 which indicated a preference in either the Ed Services Committee or the Business Services HR Committee. And then we had 7 which indicated an interest in just the Ed Services. So G and Judy, as the committee chairs, sat down with Carlin and I for nearly 3 hours, and we reviewed all the applications. And we did this year, which is an enhancement to the process, we included a rubric. And we included that rubric as part of that 3-hour discussion to make a recommendation for the board to take action on tonight. So according to the policy, I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to have G tell us who his recommendations are for educational services, and then I'll ask Judy to give her recommendations for business services and HR.
Okay, first of all, they're not my recommendations, they're the committee's recommendations. So the people who scored highest on the rubric were the ones we picked, Carol Colby and Catherine Gottwald.
Can you clarify the committee's recommendations, meaning the formed committee, is that correct, versus the Educational Services Committee?
Yeah, this wasn't the Educational Services Committee, it was the formed committee.
Thank you.
So do you want to take action on that first and then take action?
Or do you want to do it all together?
Or do it all together?
Well,
I
all
was
together?
thinking doing it all together.
Perfect.
Okay.
Judy?
And so, yeah, going through that process, we had 5 that had indicated interest in, imagine that, business services and HR had less people that wanted to be on it than the Educational Services Committee. So we are recommending Keenan Foley and Chris Scott as the members for that committee.
So, any questions or comments?
So when you did this, the process, was it just off this rubric, or did you have like face-to-face interviews? How does that whole process work with?
I can talk to that. So when we met, we talked about if we needed to do interviews, we could do that. But after we went through the process and G and Judy were comfortable with the recommendations, it was decided not to do interviews at that point. I don't believe, and I would have to ask people who've been on the board for longer than I've been here, that interviews were part of the process in the past either. If that's something that the board wants to, talk about doing in the future, I would recommend that we update the policy and the guidelines and go about it that way.
My only experience was the first time, because we do this every 2 years.
Correct.
And there weren't enough people to warrant, long, hard look at it. The people that were there were the ones that were recommended because there wasn't that many people on the list. That's my recollection.
I will say the last time that we had someone appointed, there was one person to fill a seat, and there were, I believe, 3 or 4 people that had submitted applications.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to share that, and I did share with Chris and Corey over, I would say 5 to 6 weeks in advance of this process, that it was really important to me that we had strong selection criteria, that we were really objective with our decisions, that we could feel good telling all of the applicants and the community that we had a very thorough process. And so I thank you guys for adding more rigor this round. I was under the impression, especially given that we had 13 applicants, that 2 things. One, there would be at minimum phone interview, right? As an HR professional, never in my life have I hired anybody without speaking to them. So I was surprised to learn that wasn't part of the process. And then the second piece is at looking at the policy. If you look at policy 155 on committees, A2, we can select, and this is just for thought, right, up to 3 voting non-school board citizen members. So that's just something to note, right, given the large number of applicants that we had.
Thank you for mentioning that, Jen. So in the past, what we've done with those 3, we've left 2 seats past practice has been left 2 seats for adult citizen members, and the last seat has been for a student. We have not utilized that student spot for quite some time. It's just really difficult to get students to, number one, come to the board meeting, but 2, the committee meeting because of their busy schedules. So again, if that's something that the board wants to change or look into changing, I would recommend that we update the policy.
So if I'm reading it correctly, we can have up to 3 non-school board citizen members, including up to 1 high school.
And the intent is that,
So wouldn't that be 4 people?
Yeah, that's
no,
what.
that was not the intent of how that's written, is my understanding from past practice.
That is, that's not how I'm reading it.
We can hear.
I can speak to the practice. Historically, we have wanted to ensure that we did not have a even number of members, and that we wanted a majority of the members of committees to be board members. And that's how historically it has been a 4 board member, 3 citizen member. And we were slotting students in up until COVID. And then COVID occurred, and we did bring a student member back last year for the board, but have not yet done that with respect to committee. And that is a selection that I believe by policy, John Bollendorf is the individual who recommends students for that position. But it is a set position currently in the policy. As Corey said, if board members want to propose changes to the policy, that's definitely an option.
Thank you, Meg.
Yes, Dennis?
Yeah, I'm a little conflicted on this. And I just want to explain my position a little bit. I've known G. Pope for probably 30 years. I know he's a man that I could give my wallet to and say I want it back in 2 years, and he'd give it back on the date and everything would be there. And Judy, I'm sure you're the same. So it's not about trust and respect in terms of decision making, but it is about perspectives. And it's okay to respect each other and trust each other, but have different perspectives. And my perspective on the process is that I know for a fact that G and Judy did more in terms of looking over on the candidates and reviewing the candidates and the process of a candidate than it's ever been done in the past. I also recognize that G and Judy have the authority to bring names to the board, and they could throw darts at a dartboard, and that's how they could choose them if they wanted to, but they did something which was much higher level than in the past. I also realize that your responsibility and authority is to bring names to the board. And the board has the authority then to approve or disapprove based upon whatever perceptions they have, whether it be knowledge of the candidates, whether it be questions about the process, or desire to have more of a wider process. So that's one perspective, and I totally have regard for the process that you utilize. But I also know that other members of the board, they recognize that we had 13 people, maybe 12 people, I'm not sure what it is, that applied for this position. And there's no question that a majority of those people were people unknown to people that sit around this table. We also know that there are some people in the process who are well known to people who sit around this table because they've had long-standing relationships one way or another with them. So I think the uneasiness feeling for some members of the board is that the people who are not known to the board, did they really have full opportunity to demonstrate their skill set to the board, or to the committee through the process? And some people look at it and say, yeah, they did. I mean, they answered all these questions. We had a rubric, and that was fair. Other people say that a skill set, especially with 11 people, maybe that phone interview, maybe bringing them in would have been appropriate. It's another data point. So I'm not comfortable overall with the recommendations, only in the sense that I feel that there's board members who said, hey, are we really saying that we had exhausted the data points, the acquisition of data points through the process, or should we or could we have had that additional viewpoint? My recommendation, other than just flat out voting on it, is to we have July and mostly of August before we have another meeting. I would like the committee to consider looking at extending and getting another data point through interviews. And if that happened and you brought back the same names, I'm going to support it, because then I feel like, okay, we did do due justice in terms of people who are not familiar to us, other than answering whatever 12 questions on the paperwork. So that would be my recommendation, is that we try to get those additional data points rather than vote tonight. And I can tell you that there are a number of people on the board who have shared those perceptions with me. So that's where I'm at. It is not about respecting G. Pope or Judy at all, or the process at all. It's just that we're in an era now where we're lucky to have additional people in our community who we've had no interactions with at all, that want to be part of the process. And I think it's really important that they have the widest opportunity to drive their skill set. And the only weight that I'd say that would really say that, hey, we should really look at doing this, is the fact that 3 of the 4 people who we are bringing forth, when they may be the very, very best candidates, I'm not saying they're not, but they happen to be people who we're pretty familiar with through one process or another. So that'd be my recommendation. People can do as they wish. And I don't want to have this to be, we have so many important things to do, but for some people, this process was pretty important. That's it.
Yeah, so I will tell you, and you can believe me or not, when I do something like this, I do it very objectively, whether I know somebody or not. I go by the rubric. Again, having experience in HR, you have to look at what you have and not look outside of that. So can you bring bias in? Absolutely, but you have to be aware of that and say, am I bringing bias in? And that was a big part of the conversations that we were having, because we really needed to look at what was presented there objectively, and as objectively as possible. If there isn't comfort in that because of the names that were brought forth, I am fine with changing the process. And you're right, we did more and had more rigor in this process than any other past committee. So, I mean, we've already bumped that up. And
I agree.
if we need to have more rigor to be at that comfort level, I am okay with that as well. It really is a recommendation. It's a recommendation based on the conversations that we had, the information that we had at the time.
I'm not drilling you, by the way.
No, go ahead, drill away.
No, I'm just asking a question. But would you, and you're right, you can only go on the data that you have.
Correct.
And that's what some of the board members are saying. We had the opportunity to just get a little bit more data for those people that we don't know from Sam or Sally. So that's all I'm saying.
That is absolutely true. And again, we haven't done that in the past.
I know
So
that.
it wasn't something that, even when we've had a lot of candidates, we haven't done.
I know that
So
this-
if that's something we want to do and include, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Can I
Sure,
say what
Gene.
I want to say here?
Yep.
I object to this on 2 levels. First of all, you're changing the rules in the middle of the stream. We did this, we were empowered by virtue of our positions to make recommendations. The board has its crack at it at the voting stage. You don't go back and say, I don't like who you recommended, or you could say, I don't like who you recommended, so vote. But you don't go back and say, well, I think we should do this instead. It's been done. We spent 3 hours on this. And this, in your email, you'd said something about this unintentional bias, this kind of nebulous term.
Unconscious.
That I really had a problem with.
That didn't come from me.
That came from me.
It came from the
Unconscious
email.
bias.
I really had a problem with that. I walked into that meeting, and the other 3 members can attest to this. I had people that I wanted to pick, and I told them right out who I didn't tell them who they were, but I said, I already have a decision. The 3 of them said no, to their credit, and they said, no, you can't do that. Okay? We have applications to look at. 2 of the 4 people that are being recommended, I did not know, but I'm happy to recommend them because the other 3 people decided that they were the people that we wanted. We had a rubric. We went through the rubric. At the end, I had no idea who was going to come out on top. At the end, the scores came out, and we said they're the people. We did not try to engineer this, even though I would say walking into the meeting, I was ready to do it, but I didn't do it. I accepted the procedure, right?
That's accurate.
And I made a point of it saying so, but I accepted the procedure. I'm saying that this board should accept this procedure that was established before we started, okay? Not try to engineer the results after the fact because you don't like the people that are recommended. You have your chance to vote.
Some, with all due respect, some of the board members weren't part of the process of making this ordinance. I would agree with Dennis. I don't like how it's done. And having been a person that was voted on by some of you, I like that process. I like it for transparency, and I like it because all of you got to see me. Granted, you'd seen me many times before that, but I got to be here in front of you all. You got to see how I was in front of you all. You got to see how I reacted to the questions, and so did every single community member. And since I did run on transparency, I would have, had I known, if I would have had the ability to change this policy, I would have changed it prior to this.
Sure.
To your point, G.
I think Meg wanted to
Well,
add
I
some.
would, yes, I just want to speak to the history of this policy. When I first got on the board, I think I'm probably, Judy and I maybe are the longest standing board members right now. When I got on the board and when I first became president, this policy allowed the president to make recommendations to the board. And there was a decision on the part of the board, I believe it was a unanimous decision, that that rested too much power in the president. And that actually the committee chairs, it's their committee. We as a board, we vote on members of our board to chair our committees. And it's only right that our committee chairs are responsible for reviewing and making recommendations based on, in this situation this year, a rubric and a significant meeting with the superintendent. So I just want to provide the board with history that, again, it used to be the board president, and our board, rightly so, recognized that if we are going to entrust authority over a committee to individuals on our board, that we should take a look at the recommendations that they are bringing forward, because it is the committee that they are going to be chairing over the course of this next year.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Meg.
Okay, Ted?
I was a volunteer committee member for over 2 years. I went through the same selection process, and it was an application, and I was notified. The committee chairs chose as the committee chairs will. I was comfortable with it. It worked out well. I'm comfortable with this procedure, and I like the recommendations.
And if I may say, I am not comfortable with this procedure, and this was before any applications even came in. So this was not engineered later after the fact. I was very clear to say I wanted a strong selection criteria. I don't even know if the board has seen the rubric or if you guys know what is in that rubric, but I was under the impression that interviews, or at least a subset of the applicants, would be spoken to. So I just want to share that with you. This is not a post fact. That's something I stated
I believe
several
it
times.
definitely is. We've already started the process. To now come back and say,
No,
well, we
gee.
want to back up, and now we want to do, and I'm fine for the next time around. But you don't start the process and have us work for 3 hours to make what we thought were unbiased recommendations. Because if I would have, it would be biased if I would have known the numbers before Carlin said what they were at the end. But I didn't know what the numbers were
But in
going to
making
be.
the recommendations, there were individuals that you did all know, and so when we
Yeah, but
eliminate.
2 of them I didn't know.
Correct. But when we eliminate the process of speaking to all applicants and we want to create an equitable candidate experience, what you do know, therefore, is weighted more than what you don't know about an
Change it
individual.
for the next time,
Yes.
not this time.
And I want to
We
share
started
that.
this already.
And
Are you
she-
going to say now that if we do this again, these 4 candidates cannot be picked?
No,
What I
that's
think
Well,
is.
of course you are.
Yeah,
That's
Dennis.
exactly what you're saying.
First of all,
That's fine. Go ahead.
gee, that's exactly not what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Yes,
that-
Just,
no.
just let me speak.
You,
The-
go ahead, but I'm going
Okay, all
to, I'm
right.
going to unload in a minute.
Hope so. What I said is that you extend the process to get more data points, and you brought those same 4 names in front of me, I'm going to support that process and those names. Now, you've also said that you're not comfortable doing that, and I respect that. Gee, I'm not
I
saying
don't
it has.
think you do.
Well, you don't know everything, okay? You don't know my mind, so I'm telling you I respect it. However, I want to know what happens if this is voted down, because then you are going to have, you still have the responsibility to bring it back again.
Well,
So
let's
what
come to
happens then?
that when we come to that,
If-
right?
All right.
But so, yeah, I view this as total mistrust of the authority of the chairmen of the committees, because you don't trust what we did. Yes, I do.
I know you think
It's a
that.
direct slap in our face. We were empowered to do this. You knew that.
And
So what I think is fair to say is the committee chairs followed current policy and have made a recommendation. I think we take it to a vote. If there's a motion and a second, see what happens. If it doesn't pass as presented, then I think we make a recommendation to change board policy and then start the process all over.
Actually, I would make a recommendation based on what we have, and obviously there's information. And if we're comfortable having the whole board vote, you have the same information we had, I'd be comfortable with if these recommendations, we vote not to, because again, they are a recommendation. So now the board has the ability to say, no, we want to have everybody throw a recommendation, and we want to vote as a board who those members are. I'm fine with that as well.
That took
So
us,
there
Would you
are
interview those
options.
candidates, though?
it took us 3 hours
Does
for
it still
4
be-
people.
Just a question, I mean,
I'm saying it's up to the board.
It took us 3 hours for 4 people. We have more than 9 people here. We're gonna be here all day, all right?
I mean, so
We-
we can
we-
do
I
it
think
anyway.
we-
I'm
I
saying
think we
it's up to the board, how we proceed.
You're not extending the process, you're ripping it apart and starting over again.
And G, with all due respect, I mean, this is healthy dialogue, and with us, questioning, I think we're doing our due diligence to let all of the applicants know that this is a very equitable experience.
Well, by
This
the
is
way,
not-
with the applicants, were they notified that their applications were gonna be made public?
They weren't made public.
They were
Well,
not made
They were
public.
made to everybody
To
on
the
the
board,
board.
yeah.
I sent them to the
Yeah.
full board.
Yes.
Pretty close.
So I'm going to ask G, are you open to making a recommendation, or Judy as committee chairs?
I just did, I made.
Based
that.
on the process, I stand by these, based on the process that we followed.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I didn't pick them.
And
The rubric
honestly,
picked them.
I didn't come in with any preconceived notions. I didn't plan on any one person being at the top or the bottom. I had no expectations at all when I stepped in.
okay, well, I think we should vote.
All right, so do we have a motion on the table?
Motion.
No.
What's-
I would like to make a motion to accept the nominations as put forth by the chairs.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion?
I think we had it.
Would like a roll call on the
Yeah,
vote.
yeah, so we'll have a roll call vote.
Mr. Kowalski,
Yes.
Ms. Rano,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
No.
Ms. Erler,
Meg?
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Mr. Summers.
No.
Pardon me?
No.
Mr. Robbie,
No,
Mr. Campos,
No.
Ms. Bushman.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, so we can,
I will go back and make a policy change and potentially have more strict criteria clearly laid out. That will have to come before the board, probably either at the probably in retreat, for approval, and then we can start the process over.
thank you, Corey.
Just so we're clear.
So could I get a clarification? The terms for the existing committee members run July till the end of June.
Correct.
So will we be extending committee service for those remaining committee members other than Ted, who's now on the board, until we have selected new committee members? Because we will have at a minimum committee meetings in August that are going to need citizen representation.
Right. What I'm thinking, Meg, if we do a policy change at the retreat or in July, we could potentially have a quick employment recommendation meeting in July and approval of the citizen members so that we're ready for August.
I'm just saying it's summer, and if we're looking at getting applications out the first week of July, and then we are looking at having interviews with all
No, we're not getting more
that's going to be part of the process.
We're not going to
I
send.
guess I just
We're not going to send new applications out, Meg. We're going to deal with just the applications that we currently have.
The 13 that we have.
Well, I guess I'm questioning that. If we're changing the potential process, then I'm thinking we're maybe in a position where we've got to renotice it.
I don't think so.
I don't, we can check with.
So, I mean, that's another thing
That would be up to us, not just to
we'll
you,
have to consider.
right?
I said, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
I didn't say we didn't
You know
think
what?
so.
I'll provide the board with more updates as I think through this and what our next steps are going to be.
Okay.
Just for clarity, can we confirm that in revisions to the policy that Corey and I would potentially craft, we would like to see that interviews are a consistent part of the policy language?
Correct.
Is there
Okay.
anything else that needs to be in that?
Well, I would think that, and this is, I think, something that we've discussed is, the formation of that ad hoc committee to make the decision. I think it should be the committee members that serve on that committee making the decision.
Okay, what else do
I
you
think-
want added to this?
I
To
don't
make sure
want-
we have an
Right.
understanding.
I don't want
of
to add anything, but
I guess I'm recommending that the committee chairs sit down with as the people who are bringing forward recommendations, the committee chairs sit down with the superintendent and bring forward a proposed policy.
I would like to know what everybody here would like in it before you craft something.
I would like board members to let me know if
Yes.
there's something that you want considered. Please email those to me as soon as possible so that we can consider those for updates to the policy.
I was just going to say, obviously, I'm in favor of expanding the process a little bit, and I know that's after the fact. I know that's not necessarily all fair, but I also feel that the recommendation still comes from the committee chairs to the board. I would like to retain that.
Okay.
It is their committee. On the other hand, again, I feel very strongly about the fact that we are engaging more members of the public, and we want to make sure that people of the public that we don't know, we have all the data points to let them show their skill set. And I think that we have the ability to do that, and I think not doing that is not, I think then we turn off people, and I don't want that. That's just my feeling. And it is not anything to do trust, nor do I want to break the process apart. I want to expand it a little bit. That's all, on my behalf.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, moving to item B, school perception survey results summary. Sarah O'Donnell.
Hello. Chris is going to help me get the presentation up there. All right, so our school district began utilizing the school perception survey for both staff and parent surveys in 2014. We have always used school perceptions. Last year, we adopted a shorter version of this survey. You may remember we did not have longitudinal data at that time, right? So we used comparison data. We're going to talk about that a little bit as we move through. If we want to get started, our staff survey had 604 respondents. That is 2 less respondents than the previous year. So we're looking at about the same number of people, and we're looking at a very similar makeup to what we had the previous year. 48% identified as classroom teachers, 13 ed specialists, which would be counselors, special education, library media specialists, etc. 12% educational assistant, 14% other staff like our support services staff, food service, transportation, custodial maintenance. 8% just didn't identify themselves, which is fine, and 5% identified as administration. No major changes in location. Our largest chunk of staff responding comes from SPASH, which is not a surprise just given the size of our buildings. And our time with the district, so that 41% represents individuals who've worked for the district for 10 or more years, and that decreased by 1 percentage point year over year. So we're really looking at a very similar makeup of folks year over year. You may remember the updated survey also builds out these staff survey indexes for us. So each individual question will build into these indexes, which try to give us a really clear look at kind of where we're doing across academics, engagement, support, student experience, and staff experience. The percentage numbers at the bottom, again, we're looking at our longitudinal data. So Corey and I did some digging when we were looking at results as they were coming in, reports from School Perception Survey. And when we asked the question about that comparison data, what we found out was not all questions were being compared to the same number of school districts, and not all questions were being compared to the same set of school districts. So I really struggled with knowing if we're comparing ourselves to this set of districts and compared to this set, like I was having a hard time feeling like I was presenting you information that was going to be really useful. So I feel like traditionally we have used longitudinal data. I have the comparison data, should at some point the board feel that's useful to them in like a retreat scenario or you want to go over that. But I really want to focus on our own either growth or decrease from the previous year, given that I still think it will give you really good information to work from, and we control it. So I know that this is factual, and I can't speak to the other stuff. So so the numbers at the bottom are a little bit different. So what you'll see, like academics and student experience had our biggest drops of those negative 2 and about 2.5%. Those are not statistically significant drops, but they're your biggest drops. So to me, that would be a place where we would be asking directors or principals or supervisors to really take a look and see, do we see any hot spots within that data? That, is that coming from a particular school or a particular staff group that really can dig into that before we start to see it move into a statistically significant drop? Obviously we want those to stay we want to see them improving as much as possible. I love that picture. So our staff surveys build out into kind of 3 different areas. So the first of those is workday, and we can really spend a lot of time on individual questions. We can kind of breeze through the individual questions. Again here, so we'll see the question is on the far left. In the middle is that percent of staff members who agree or strongly agree. So we want to see high marks there, right? Anything in really 90% I'm really happy with. And then that change since the previous year will give you that longitudinal kind of up or down. Anything that has a 2-point change from last year will be statistically significant, and you'll see those highlighted kind of as we go on. So if we want to go to the next slide, we could take a look at, what jumps out at you is this, I feel safe at work.
And these are staffs.
This is staff. This is only staff, all staff. Everybody combined. So we see a significant drop in staff feeling safe at work, that negative 8.65. We do still see that 81% strongly agree, but that would obviously be something that we would be wanting to look into if we're moving through that. Environment would be that next category. In the last year, I received useful feedback to improve my work. We saw that jump quite a bit, which is good. Not quite to that statistically significant, but certainly moving in the right direction. And then we see a couple drops in all students in our schools are respected for their values and beliefs, and information important to my work is shared with me in a timely and effective manner. And that's 66%. Again, those are 2 data points that I would look at to say, 66% feels low to me. I would probably be wanting to look into that, even though we're not seeing that significant drop in that change since previous year. Here we see two that jump out at us. Our staff handles student discipline in a consistent manner. It's only up 41%, and we saw a negative 9.8% drop on that year over year. And our school's student discipline practices and policies are effective at 34%, which is a 12.32% drop. So those two certainly, I think, need to be looked into. And I am making a guess, but I think if we dug into those questions, likely tie back to that I feel safe at work answer as well. In terms of support, staff feeling supported, we get to see some positives. District's pay practices are fair, went up 11.54%. 40% strongly agree or agree.
So that means 60% still do not agree.
Correct. Yep. It also means it's statistically significant better than last year. So I'm trying. District seeks input from a broad group of staff members is at 46%. Again, would like to see that higher. Is a statistically significant improvement from last year. And the school board is doing what it takes to make our school district successful. 55% agree or strongly agree with that, which again is a nice increase from last year of 7.04%. Here again, we see some movement in the positive direction. Parents and community staff feel that parents and the community support the school district. School district is heading in the right direction. District administration is doing what it takes to make our district successful, and they are recognized when they do a good job. Here again, we see that red. All students in our schools are given equal opportunities to learn and experience success. We saw that drop a bit. And then our last slide for staff questions. I have training and support to work with students from different backgrounds. We did not see that go up or down. And our school supports students from diverse backgrounds. We saw drop just a little bit. Comment theme analysis. So I did include this year for you reports from school perception surveys that went through and looked at all of the comments that were provided and pulled them into these themes and then provided some examples of what those comments were. So for staff, respondents shared their feedback about pay and benefits, offered suggestions about curriculum, shared concerns about workload, suggested that more help is needed in responding to student behavior challenges. So again, we see that behavior piece coming through, and then shared what they appreciate about the district. And that is included in the packet for your review. How likely are staff members to recommend the district to a friend or family member? We saw that go up just a hair to that almost 6 average. Questions about the staff survey before we jump into the family survey? I know it's a lot of information at the end of a long meeting. Not yet? Yeah, Dennis.
Just a comment, and we all would like more positive feedback in terms of, those numbers. I think we have an excellent superintendent. I know that we have excellent administrators, and we're not pointing fingers at anybody, including the board, but we have work to do. And part of it also is just the nature of teaching now, what our teachers are going through in terms of workload, accountability, politics, pay and benefits. I mean, it's not just our district, but it just shows that, and we had a gentleman earlier, a teacher, make the comment that, they've reached their point. And I think they have, and as much as we can do as a board and administration to support them, to acknowledge them, to validate them, and to provide for their needs, because they're real. I mean, all of you get to the buildings and you all know teachers. What they're going through in our district and all districts, I think, is extremely, extremely tough. And we're lucky to have the staff we do, and as much as we can do to move those numbers forward, I know we're all on the same page, but thanks for the feed. And that data is real important, and we appreciate having it.
Yeah. All right, we'll get through the family survey. So family survey, we had 1,290 respondents. That is up about 200 surveys from the previous year, so really excited to see that. 69% of those had a student in elementary, so PK through 6, or secondary school, 7 through 12. Those two numbers do not add up to 100 because we ask them, I've got kids in multiple schools. So Oh, I did just want to touch on, sorry.
No.
For ethnicity of respondents, we did not see a significant change in answers year over year, and that does represent pretty close to where our students are when we pull that data. So parent indexes are pulled the same way, right? Crafted from those individual questions that we'll go to. They are informed, included, education, atmosphere, and experience. Again, we don't see anything statistically significant. We do see 3% increases on included and education. So again, might be an opportunity to go back and take a look and see if there are some spots where we really see those high marks and if there are things that can be replicated across other schools or across other departments if we're finding out why those successes are there. For leadership and communication, our school board is doing what it takes to make our school district succeed. We see almost 80% agree and strongly agree there. That is a statistically significant change from last year and in a positive direction, up 8.33%. And we also see solid jumps for the district is heading in the right direction and a district administration is doing what it takes to make our district successful at 4 and 3%. Overall, how would you rate communications from the school district? We didn't see much of a change there, up a smidge, but not much. How would you like to receive school information? No surprises here, right? Email, phone, text, meet with teachers, school and district newsletters, website, and then kind of tails off from there. All schools, or the school, provides opportunities for parental involvement, went up to 84%, which is an increase to 5.68%. So not only are we seeing parents involved, they're seeing opportunities for involvement, so that was very positive. No major changes here. We do see everything at least headed towards 2% increases, which is wonderful. Next slide. Again, we didn't see a lot of change within parent surveys. Here we do see 3 negative. If my child breaks a rule at school, they are fairly treated. 91% agree, strongly agree. Small decrease from the previous year. I'm satisfied with our school's efforts to address bullying at 77%. Almost a 1% decrease from last year. And my child feels safe at school at 92%, almost a 1% decrease from last year. Comment theme analysis was also included for parent surveys. So again, it's these themes and then comments under that theme are included in the board packet. So parents showed appreciation for many academic and extracurricular opportunities for students, satisfaction with overall district communication, and included suggestions for continued improvement. Some have concerns about student behaviors and maintaining a safe learning environment. Many respondents would like more information about how the district is promoting online safety and offered suggestions. And then some respondents offered feedback on supporting all students' academic success. Again, not a big jump in how likely you are to recommend the district to a friend or family member, right in that 7.78 range, which is up but not much. And then really just bringing you back to your strategic planning, your pillars. So the goal of this is to really give you that high-level overview so that you have the information you need as you head into your retreat to really think about how this might impact goals or things you want to work on, or certainly if you have questions between now and then, feel free to reach out and let me know. I'd be happy to dig into it deeper with you and share additional information.
Any questions
Sarah.
or comments for Sarah?
Good job.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tough spot to be with your presentation in the agenda. All right, moving on to see future meetings, dates, and times. And so both committees, Ed Services and Business and HR, chose to, just due to summer schedules, not meet in July. I believe that we may have employment recommendations, and if we do, that meeting would be on July 10th. And so just note that. We anticipate that being a quick meeting. We also have our school board retreat, June 26th, and more to come on that regarding location and agenda. And then we have August 8th, which is another regular board meeting. All right, so we are going to be moving into closed session. Consider 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee, specifically a junior high assistant principal, interim director of student services, secondary curriculum and instruction coordinator, and student services coordinator. And 19.851E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, specifically the possible authorization to negotiate, proceed with building purchase and building sale. So I'm looking for a motion to convene into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 1985-1C and 1985-1E.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please, Carlin.
Mr. Summers,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Mr. Robbie,
Yes.
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Ms. Erler,
Yes.
Ms. Rano,
Yes.
Mr. Kowalski,
Yes.
Mr. Campos,
Yes.
Ms. Bushman.
Yes.
And motion carries.
Great, thank you. Should we take a 5 minutes? 5 minutes, so back at 8:40?
Yeah.
Yes.